So this is the 11:30 hours GMT edition, coming online on the internet a few minutes earlier as part A of the Khoodeelaar television channel. Baby Angel Geronimo editions, but we are dedicating the main diagnosis to the massacre of, they say, more than 30 migrants crossing from France to the UK. Now, this is not a tragedy. This is a planned massacre, and we shall be diagnosing factually. It's not guesswork. We shall factually portray the massacre as the massacre. Now, this is the financial crimes. And this one, we noticed before we actually read the entry on Wikipedia about this newspaper, that it was following the Daily Mail's racist denial and stupidity. Now we know that it is owned by the Daily Mail. So this is stupid. This is stupid, in denial, racist headline. We shall diagnose why we call it stupid, in denial. About they say the 31, but there have been hundreds of refugees and migrants who have been murdered while crossing the channel. And this is the Daily Star, which is not devoting the main space on page 1 to the massacre, but at least it has got the front page and it's calling it tragedy. It's not tragedy, it's massacre, mass murder. The Daily Mail is calling it tragedy. It's not. It's massacre and mass murder. And this is outrageous criminality on the part of the racist liars at the Daily Mail. It is accusing France. But France is not the only party behind the massacre. It's Johnson. Boris Johnson has needed this kind of diversion. And whoever executed this massacre was doing it in accordance with the plot to give Boris Johnson the diversionary excuse, because Johnson is himself politically sinking, and he cannot be doing this and cannot be staying in that post, because even the European, which is a weekly paper published by so-called anti-Brexiteers, but it's another racist paper. I shall diagnose the racism. And they're admitting belatedly that Johnson is unravelling. Unravelling means he's coming apart, and his pretenses are coming apart. Now, that is not true. Johnson has never been together. I mean, Johnson has lacked integrity right from the beginning of his corrupt, lying, opportunist political career, let's say, which began in earnest about 20 to 25 years ago. Johnson has always been coming apart. But the fact that he has never been kind of a myth, a mythological kind of source of assurance and leadership and winnability and all the rest of it. All those things have been obvious to us, and our campaign has been uniquely as it turns out now, saying that Johnson is a shambolic sham and a liar from the start. So these people behind the new European club, saying that he's unraveling, they have not been doing journalism. They have not been doing the facts. So we shall come to that also again. And this is the Times, which is also in denial and is lying, because this gives them a diversionary space to divert away from Johnson's lying kind of degeneration. So that's the daily bribing Boris Johnson graph. This is the daily bribing Boris Johnson graph, which is giving the whole front page to the massacre. And the Guardian, despite or contrary to pretensions, the Guardian is lying as well, because this is not a tragedy. This is a massacre. All right, so why is the Guardian in denial and is lying? We'll come to that in a couple of seconds. Well, a couple of minutes rather than seconds. And this is the latest big business crooks that has been bailed out, Bulb company. Now, this is the amount without any kind of hesitation or without any question about the fact that billions of pounds are being given to big business criminals operating as capitalism. The financial crimes says that it is the financial crimes, the Bible of capitalism. The Bible, self-styled Bible, lies, doesn't tell the truth. And we shall start with the financial crimes about this 31. He says more than 30 migrants drowned in worst disaster of Channel Sarge. It's not Channel Sarge at all. It's a massacre. The massacre that has given Boris Johnson the kind of immediate pretext to make a claim against France. That is a diversion, because that takes away the attention from all the disasters, other disasters that Johnson is kind of embarked on or sinking in. That the disasters and the lies and dysfunctions and denials and corruption, all of those things are now getting into the sphere of those who were in denial, the Fleet Street papers and others, now others meaning the other mainstream media. Johnson has never, ever, and this is a repeat of the assertion we have made a few minutes ago, Johnson, since he embarked on the political career, so essentially 20 to 25 years ago, has never ever come across as being fit for purpose. Fit for purpose, even accepting, even allowing for the share of criminality among the ideological right that he has always belonged in and aspired to belong in. And the fact that the new European, which has got among its controllers or among its editorial kind of people Tony B. Liar's propagandist and a big war criminal liar, Alistair Campbell, as one of the people editing this paper, gives that away because they say that Johnson is unravelling. Johnson is not unravelling. You can only use the word unravelling when the subject of that word or use of that word has up to this point been not unraveling, been fit for purpose, been delivering. Now that cannot apply on the facts to the behavior and the role and the prospects of Boris Johnson. This program is not ideologically biased against anyone. We are only concerned about the evidence, objective, universal, factual evidence. It doesn't matter what ideological bent anyone we are diagnosing, we're discussing is. Only the truth, and against the truth, the lies that differentiate our, if you like, diagnostic conclusions. Either way. So Boris Johnson is lying in 2021, as Boris Johnson has been lying for the whole of this century. And we have evidence that he had been lying when Michael Howard was the leader of the Conservative Party and Boris Johnson was already a member of parliament in the 1990s. And we said a couple of days ago that when Michael Howard was in power as the leader of the Conservatives, and Boris Johnson was found to have lied to Michael Howard about one of his sexual kind of adulterous relationships, Michael Howard sacked him for lying. And also Michael Howard sent Johnson to go to Liverpool, Merseyside, and apologize to the people of Liverpool whom Johnson had insulted. Now, so that happened in the 1990s. That happened more than 20 years ago, more than 25 years ago. So from the beginning, Johnson has lacked integrity. Johnson has lacked morality. Johnson has lacked ethics and any care or concern for ethics, morality, accountability, transparency, honesty, whatsoever. So clear was Boris Johnson's dishonesty and congenital lying as early as the 1990s when Michael Howard was leader of the Conservatives. We shall check the actual date when Michael Howard was leader of the Conservatives. We said the 1990s, but that means that we have to check whether it was the 1990s or later. Let's see what the entry on Michael Howard says about his tenure as leader of the Conservative Party. Remember, this is a diagnostic factual program. So we are not going to leave any room for any doubt as to what the period was Michael Howard was leader. So let's see when he was. So it says, So it was not in the 90s, it was in the 20th century, this century. So that is a correction we make, that he was leader of the Conservative Party and leader of the opposition from November 2003 to December 2005. So that's the relevant entry. So 2003 to 2005, not in the 1990s, because 1990s was with John Major. And although he was involved with a thing called Soma oil and gas, and it was investigated, the investigation was closed because of alleged insufficiency of evidence. So let's go to Boris Johnson and see if the entry has got any mention of Johnson being sacked. So in there, he's listed as being married for 6 years, 6 calendar years with Allegra Mostyn Owen. And he was married for 27 calendar years with Marina Wheeler. And he's now currently listed as married to Kerry Simmons, married in 2021. So as far as this entry is concerned, we are looking at the headings, subject headings. So it's this entry on Johnson in the Wikipedia, as we are looking at today, 25th of November 2021. This is not something that actually contains any of those facts about Johnson lying, but Johnson lied and was sacked by Michael Howard. We shall check on the entries and other publicly accessible records in due course and update on the actual evidence that we find that we have not been able to spot in this short look at the weekend. Johnson was featured in television news bulletins when he was in Liverpool to apologize to the people of Liverpool. And the phrase he actually used repeatedly was, "I'm a squashed lemon." That was one of the phrases that Boris Johnson used. While in Liverpool, while filmed in Liverpool, walking in Liverpool, as part of the order that he was complying with, order from Michael Howard, that he should be sent to Liverpool to apologize to the people of Liverpool. So, the editorial group that actually controls the New European is, of course, ill-informed or careless. It doesn't matter whether they're both or one or the other. Essentially, this world exclusive diagnosis does this kind of thing, that we are looking at the evidence and we find that even the title that claims to be against Boris Johnson is failing to get the facts right. He is not unraveling. He has never been settled and never had integrity, political integrity whatsoever. So this is the paper that is meant for Northeast London boroughs, mainly focused on Waltham Forest. And it's published by Guardian-series.co.uk. It's not to be confused with the Guardian newspaper. So we shall be looking at this particular aspect. The item is called Council's House Builder Quizzed. Is organization losing sight of original aims? A developer set up to build as many council homes as it possibly could in Waltham Forest has been warned it may be losing sight of this goal. House builder 60 Bricks, set up and owned by Waltham Forest Council, aims to finish 800 homes by 2026, of which half will be affordable. Now, this is the behavior of a council, very reminiscent of the behavior of the Waltham, of the Haringey Council, and reminiscent of the more extensive disaster and corruption in Croydon Council. Croydon Council is controlled by the Labour Party, as was Haringey at the time when it started the corrupt operation. And the Daily Star is carrying a piece about £100,000 benefit cheat mom's luxury holidays and the judge sparing her prison. A benefits cheat mom of 4 who went on 5-star holidays to Cyprus after pocketing nearly £100,000 has been spared jail. Now, this is the kind of judicial decisions that we have kind of pointed out, especially about the record of obviously blonde women, white women, blonde young white women criminals being spared prison and even spared full conviction, criminal conviction by members of the judiciary, which we shall also update on the fact that Tower Hamlets Council is exposed as being caught in contradictory position about the prosecution of Afsana Begum for housing fraud. And the disclosures that came across through the so-called process of the prosecution trial have all been left unattended to, let's say. And we shall be talking about Tower Hamlets Council corruption, Newham Council's corruption, Waltham Forest Council's corruption, Lambeth Council's corruption, Southwark Council's corruption, Islington Council's corruption, Camden Council's corruption, Westminster City of Westminster Council's corruption. Not necessarily in this edition, but in due course. Now here, on 2 pages 26 and 27, is a spread called Bozo Blankety Blank. Bozo is short for Boris Johnson, although the Bozo doesn't really reflect his initials. So what the Daily Scar is doing here is not calling him unravelling as the New European is calling, but is saying, are you Peppa Pig ignorant when it comes to understanding what the hell Bozo Johnson is on about these days? Well, join the club. What they're saying is that Boris Johnson doesn't make sense when he spews. And that's what effectively what the New European is saying, that his brain's coming apart. Boris Johnson has boasted consistently or persistently of his being a linguist, that he can read the original Greek or the original Latin or whatever it is, the language that he claims other than English, that he reads in the original. Now, the point about languages or proficiency in languages is that languages are different. But that doesn't mean that languages are storages of unique knowledge or unique enabling faculties or facilities. The languages are the same, but the difference is about their particular culture, the particular backgrounds, and the particular examples. As for universal values and universal topics, all languages are the same. Each language is a storage of culture. That is true about its own background history. But when it comes to or jumps to universal concepts, all languages are the same. They are vehicles of expression, converse, conduits. So Boris Johnson says that he's a scholar in some European languages. What that actually conveys, what that serves, is to befuddle, to confuse a majority of the people who are not necessarily well versed in linguistics or matters to do with languages and the roles of languages. So those people got an immediate kind of impression that this guy is actually more intelligent than the average people because he is able to read Greek or Latin or whatever. That's a false conclusion, but that is the falsehood that is generated by the degenerate likes of Boris Johnson, who want to use that falsehood to mislead people into thinking that they, the likes of Johnson, possess more wisdom and knowledge than they actually do. And most certainly that they are more honest than they really are. So Johnson has been playing tricks with this for as long as he has been in public life. So it would be unravelling if this was discovered only now. Our campaign discovered at the beginning, let's say, as we said, that the two examples of Michael Howard disciplining Johnson during the first decade of this century, only tip of the iceberg. That is to say, Boris Johnson has deserved to be disciplined by others who have been leading the Conservative Party while he has been just an MP or backbencher. But they haven't done that. The fact that they haven't done that does not invalidate the charges against Johnson that could be used to penalize him, discipline him, and expose him to the public as a dishonest and untruthful and unreliable person. Way before Michael Howard sent him to Liverpool or sacked him, Johnson was caught lying about a plot he was involved in hatching to have one journalist beaten up because that journalist had been kind of investigating the crimes and the criminal behavior of one of his friends who was actually convicted and sent to prison. That friend of Johnson's, convicted, imprisoned friend of Johnson, is the son of an Iranian mother and a kind of British father. His name is Darius Guppy, and his mother was Shusha Guppy. His mother died, of course, but she was given a series of platforms while she was alive to publish insidious, defamatory kind of content against the people of Iran. Shusha Guppy. And Darius Guppy got involved in a conspiracy to steal, and he was found guilty and he was sent to jail. And Guppy said to Johnson that he wanted the journalist investigating him roughed up, beaten up. So that was long before the incident of Johnson being sent to Liverpool, where he confessed to be a squashed lemon, and he was being He's being sacked by Michael Howard from the Conservative Party front bench for lying. Now, Johnson's lying on that occasion to Michael Howard was linked with Petronella Wyatt, I think. And Petronella Wyatt, of course, is the daughter of a former Labour MP, Woodrow Wyatt. Now, Woodrow Wyatt, after he stopped being an MP, became a very close friend to the Conservative Margaret Thatcher. So let's see what the entry on Petronella Wyatt says. Remember, the Petronella Wyatt is one of the two women with whom Boris Johnson had adulterous sex with. One is Petronella Wyatt and the other one is Jennifer Arcuri. Both women have come out in the public domain in the last few weeks, condemning Boris Johnson's dishonesty. They have not held back, if you like, because Petronella Wyatt has said, as published in the Murdoch Scum, that she, Petronella Wyatt, always thought or always felt that Boris Johnson would, or Boris Johnson's political career would end over sleaze. And of course, the detailed diary entries made by Jennifer Arcuri more or less say the same thing. Let's say 10 years apart. And they don't mention Petronella Wyatt's affair with Johnson. Well, they do, but they don't give the details. They say that between 2000 and 2004, Wyatt had an affair with the then editor of The Spectator and Conservative MP Boris Johnson. Now, as I said, we're looking for references to Johnson's adultery with Petronella Wyatt in the context of Michael Howard, whether Michael Howard had to sack him because Johnson lied about Johnson's adultery with Petronella Wyatt, and that is correct. Let's see how much space the entry gives to that particular period. Between 2000 and 2004, Wyatt had an affair with the then editor of The Spectator and Conservative MP Boris Johnson. Now, this is interesting. This is amazing because most of the entries don't mention this or this kind of length or this kind of fact about Johnson because they're shielding Johnson. They're still shielding Johnson. This one is the one that says Johnson had promised to leave his wife. By his wife, it is, of course, Marina Wheeler, daughter of Charles Wheeler, the BBC correspondent, television. When her mother found out, that is Petronella Wyatt's mother found out about the affair, she discussed it with the press. Johnson was fired from his shadow cabinet post by party leader Michael Howard for lying about the affair. That is what it says there, as he had initially categorically denied it. So that is Johnson lying between 2000 and 2004. So what on earth is the reason why the European is running this heading? This heading suggests that Johnson has only suddenly become known as a liar. That's not the case. That's not the case according to me, of course, and my knowledge is far more extensive than anything that you can see here or any of the papers in Fleet Street. But that headline about Johnson suggests that he's unraveling, that is, Johnson's coming apart, that Johnson's being caught and Johnson's being exposed is happening only now. It's not the case. It has been happening at least for 21 years, because 2000 and 2004, that 4 calendar years is the period in which Johnson was having the adulterous relationship, adultery with Petronella Wyatt. And the other thing I have to say is that because of Johnson, Petronella Wyatt's life has been ruined. Because whatever the motive of Petronella Wyatt's mother was, according to the entry on the Wikipedia, for making the fact known to the press, once that became known and Petronella Wyatt became, in effect, on the facts, the victim of Johnson's manipulations and lying, that actually destroyed Petronella Wyatt's confidence and a lot of her personality. And I would say that, judging by the fact that Johnson has been condemned thoroughly by Jennifer Arcuri's diaries, whether those contents will be leading to prosecution of Johnson is a different matter. But publicly, what Jennifer Arcuri has published, according to the Observer and also via the statements that Arcuri has made to John Wyer, who has been given extensive authority and authorization by Jennifer Arcuri to do the right thing with the contents of our diaries about Boris Johnson. That fact is very serious evidence of the fact that this heading is inappropriate and it's kind of not contemporary, because the headline there, or the heading about Johnson there, should be on the facts that Johnson cannot be protected by his kind of various propaganda platforms in Fleet Street and in the media anymore. That's what that the others are now having to confess, that they have been falsely and dishonestly and untruthfully and immorally shielding Boris Johnson, the liar, the congenital liar. Remember, congenital liar is the phrase that applies to Johnson on his behavior, but has been made notable by the book written by the woman who served as the ambassador of France in Britain until 2017, I think. Sylvie Barman. Sylvie Barman has used the phrase, of course Boris Johnson is a congenital liar, as reported in February 2021 by the Times newspaper. So by all accounts, this headline, he is unraveling, is obsolete. Johnson is at a stage now where he has to go. Johnson is surplus to requirement, and Johnson is unfit for purpose beyond any pretense recovery that he can engage in. On the pages 4 and 5, here is the details of that front page. Heading is Unravelling by James Ball. And it says, litany of lies and laziness catch us up. It's not laziness. Litany of lies and corruption and criminality and racism catch us up. Now the piece in there are several pieces in this edition of the New European against Johnson's lies and corruption. But the agenda or the angle from which these people at the New European are allegedly attacking Johnson is as corrupt as Johnson's corruption, especially about the criticism they're making of Johnson over his ditching of part of the HS2, because HS2 is the thing that is wrong, not the party that is in power that is allegedly going ahead with HS2. Remember the difference. Not the party, it's the project that is wrong. And we shall talk more about HS2 later. But we go back to other things that the political murderer of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, has been doing. One comment that he has made, a so-called aside, like a comment in passing, obiter dicta in Latin, concerns the fact that he won't particularly mind if the UK was broken up. There's a very constitutionally very serious issue. So we shall diagnose the breakup of the United Kingdom in due course, not in this particular part, but just saying that we have been using the quotation marks around UK. And we have been explaining that in relation to the future of Scotland. And we can add the future of Northern Ireland. But essentially, the reason why we have been using quotation marks around the UK is to do with the political future with Scotland. Now, if Starmer lets go of Scotland, then he will let go of Northern Ireland. And as we have said in the past, the political kind of strength among those who say that the Welsh nationalism should follow the path of Scotland and become separate. The people in Wales who claim to be Welsh nationalists are politically far behind the Scottish National Party, even though the SNP, the Scottish National Party, is itself very weak, in our view, on many things. And we have held that positions even when Alex Salmond was in post as leader of the SNP. Because 16 years ago, when the Ken Livingstone was still in place as the so-called mayor at the expense of London. Livingstone foolishly and very anti-socialist, as an anti-socialist kind of opportunist, was following the conservatives, the right-wingers, in denouncing the Scottish people. And he was libeling and slandering and defaming the collective Scottish identity by saying that England was paying too much money to the Scots. And he said that London's people were losing out because of huge subsidies that the UK was paying to Scotland. So we published on the internet long, detailed denunciation Livingstone and called him a racist against the Scots. And Alex Salmond did not make any comment about Livingstone as far as we can recall, or that line. Now, of course, all of that was happening way before the SNP got into power and Salmond was the first minister. And Salmond was able to attempt to rape and sexually assault quite a few of the staff members. But although those things were not known and things were not fact in 2005, 2006, when we spontaneously and voluntarily defended the collective image of the Scottish people, the fact that Salmond didn't comment and he didn't even contact us shows that he was a racist as bad as Nicola Sturgeon and an idiot. The fact that Alex Salmond has had a remarkably close link with this Pakistani origin ex-SNP MP, and the pair were allowed by the Russians to present a program that they were given by Vladimir Putin, is something that needs investigation and needs to be used as evidence. Because Salmond is a proven opportunist liar. And the fact that Salmond is a proven opportunist liar is central to the fact that all the racist anti-Scots or anti-Scottish utterances by the likes of even Ken Livingstone, who falsely and criminally, untruthfully paraded himself as Red Ken, is connected with the political death of the Labour Party by Keir Starmer. And the political death of the Labour Party is not evident just about Scotland. It is to be found in the political morgue. The political morgue that has been undergoing preparation for decades in Britain to bury the Labour Party. What Tony Blair did to the Labour Party was part of a continuing process that actually began with James Callaghan. Callaghan aided and abetted Margaret Thatcher. Callaghan was as corrupt, as racist, as ignorant, as stupid as Neil Kinnock. And this was taken advantage of by the likes of Tony Blair. And Tony Blair then hastened the process of the political death of the Labour Party. Contrary to the claims that the liar, racist liar, Gordon Brown makes from time to time, he is a racist and he is a dishonest individual, and the whole cabal in the House of Peers that includes the racist criminal Helena Kennedy is corrupt. So we go to the front pages of today's papers about the massacres of the migrants. Now, The Guardian says that tragedy at sea claims 31 lives in deadliest day of refugee crisis. Now, before reading the actual copy, I'm predicting that The Guardian would not be referring to any of the international treaty obligations or to the Refugee Convention. And I've got a highlight here which contains a kind of quotation from somebody called Anwar Solomon, being quoted from the Refugee Council. And this is supposed to be the highlight of the whole piece. Now is the time to end the cruel tactic of seeking to punish or push away those who seek safety here. Now, anyone who has watched this program for any significant period would know that one of these central pillars of international evidential diagnostic analysis that we use is made up of the various international treaties and obligations that those treaty membership confer on each member state, like the United Kingdom. The Refugee Council the refugee councils are urging the government that actually caused the massacre, to do something to ensure that lives are saved by allowing the seekers of refuges safe routes. That will never happen. Why would that not happen ever? Because there is no campaign. And I say this as a campaigner, that any campaign that is intended to change a particular decision or a policy or a project can only succeed if the campaign is aimed at the careers or the benefits of careers of those who make the decisions and those whose role or roles will make the difference in terms of either keeping the project that is being campaigned against or opposing. So, for example, when we stopped the government, UK government, doing the hole in Brick Lane under the pretext of the Crossrail project, we did that by using the local Tower Hamlets Council as the lever, which the government was using to impose the project of digging a hole, because Tower Hamlets, the local council, had a role in colluding with any activity that goes on within the borough, and Brick Lane being within the borough of Tower Hamlets Council, had a kind of impact from the role of the council itself. So what we did a number of things, but one of the things we did was to focus attention on the role of the Tower Hamlets Council itself, right from the beginning. Let's say from calendar 2003. And we said that we shall focus on Tower Hamlets councillors and their careers. And we would make their careers and the future the subject of the political process, whereby they risked or they were exposed to risks of losing their political position, their elected position, and their popularity, etc., etc. Now, this is not a side issue. This is the central issue as far as those councillors are concerned. Because if they cease to be councillors, or if they are seen by enough voters as traitors to the local community, then that's it, their careers would be over. So we focused attention on that aspect, on that particular scenario. And that played the part in the council telling the government to drop it. And all the things that we did in terms of public action, which I created, mobilized, and articulated over 7 years solid, meant that the role of the council was never far from the political attention of the community that we actually made aware of the council's role. So when the Guardian says that the Refugee Council or similar are urging the Conservative government to make life safe for the people having to risk their lives in crossing through the channel, the Guardian doesn't know the world. The Guardian doesn't know the political world. The Guardian doesn't know the real world. The Guardian is doing a routine piece of journalism. It is just quoting this and that and the other. When we stopped the Crossrail corrupt project, we didn't get any support from the Guardian or the BBC or anybody, really. We mobilized our activities around the local councillors and, of course, around the Central Government Department for Transport, so-called DAFT. And we did our own publishing. There is no evidence that any of the Refugee Council people have focused the attention of the people in the Home Office or in the House of Commons, other MPs, with any significant evidence that if those people, the MPs in the government departments, if they didn't do the necessary to make the refugees process safe, there is no evidence that they've done that. And we go back to the years of lying that the government has been inventing and retailing against the perfectly healthy baby angel Geronimo. There is no evidence that any of the decision makers at the depraved DEFRA was made to realize that they would lose their positions, not just being condemned and criticized, but they would actually lose their jobs if they didn't leave baby angel Geronimo alone. What has been happening about baby angel Geronimo is that people have been making pleas and urging the likes of Boris Johnson, the likes of the depraved George Injustice Eustace, and the likes of the criminal murderess Christine Middlemiss. They've been making pleas to these criminals and murderers and evildoers. There is no way that any of these evildoers would listen to pleas and abandon its murderous plot and criminality. So when the Guardian says that this person, Enver Solomon, Enver sounds like a most likely Turkish name. So Anwar Solomon. And they're mentioning the French president Emmanuel Macron, apparently saying that France will not let the channel become a cemetery. And Macron allegedly promised to find and condemn those responsible for the tragedy. Now, this will not bring to life the victims of the latest massacre. It is noticeable as the blogger, the artist, taxi driver, has done in his 2-minute press review today. I mean, he appeared to be kind of crying as he was presenting the edition. And anyone with any sense would do that. And these statements by Macron and Boris Johnson are corrupt to the core. And we shall, as I said, be going into details of this one. So this one in the Times refers to Kurdish umbrella charity saying that it feared that most were of Kurdish origin. Now, these people, if they are of Kurdish origin, let's look at the Kurdistan situation. In my broadcast on Channel 4 News slot in January 1992, I said that people were desperate to leave the countries of origin for destinations in the West because the local situation was unbearable for them to stay in. So the Western governments urgently needed to undertake long-range programs to make the home territories, the home regions, tolerable and bearable for these people. Now, I said that in January 1992 on the mainstream television program, Channel 4 News slot. That is to say, the slot that is called the slot, or was called the slot, in January 1992, following the broadcast of the 7 p.m. Channel 4 News Bulletin, is still unfulfilled, unfollowed, and yet it is still valid. What I said is the most up-to-date thing now as it was when I said it in January 1992. Now, one of the things that I use as evidence for describing Jeremy Corbyn as an idiot is this. The Corbyn was personally condemned by David Cameron for visiting a group of asylum seekers or migrants in France. Now, how many people can comprehend the fact that all of us who are outraged at the murders of Sarah Everard, Sabina, Nessa, and other victims, these women who died, what's the difference between these women and Sarah Everard and Sabina, Nessa, and others? This is what the blogger Chunky Mark was getting emotional about it. And he says that nobody knows their names. The migrants who were massacred, he didn't say massacred, but I'm saying massacred. The migrants that have been massacred, nobody knows their names. Nobody knows their siblings. Nobody knows what their favorite colors were. What words can be used to describe what has happened to these people? Because according to the Times piece, and according to the charity that is thought to be Kurdish, most of these people were Kurdistanis. So, according to one observer that the Times has spoken to, the people smugglers were exploiting the lack of cooperation between Britain and France over the migrants crossing. What does it show? It shows that both Johnson and Macron are fronting administrations that are openly choosing not to take action when they know definitely that people would be drowning or people would be dying. Because this one, the piece in the Times report contains a quotation from the mayor of Calais, Natasha Bouchard. The mayor of Calais said she had written almost daily to ministers, that is French ministers, warning that a tragedy of this sort was bound to happen. She said her warnings had been ignored by a government that had failed to give French police the means to fight people smuggling gangs that were charging migrants from 2,700 to 7,000 euros to reach the UK. Natasha Bouchard says, I say, enough is enough. And this person called Darmanin said that people smugglers were exploiting the lack of cooperation between France and Britain, and added that he had recently sent Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, a list of requests from French police seeking help in dismantling the gangs. Officials in Paris regularly claim that such requests go unanswered. Now read that again. Priti Patel ignored and ignores regular communications from France for cooperation to stop the people smugglers. Remember what the Daily Mail and the Sun and the Daily Bribing Boris Johnson graph say. They say that it's France which is causing this. Because this is the heading on page 1 of the Sun, which actually contradicts what the Times is saying. The Times is saying that Priti Patel ignores regular communications from France to deal with the people smugglers, to stop them. Whereas the Sun is saying the French police idly look on as rafts head to UK. Hours later, 30 migrants die, one a little girl. Now, this reference to one a little girl is supposed to be emotionally charging. Does it mean that the 31 adults don't matter? So what I have said about campaign and what I'll say again about the campaign. Okay, so this is the Sun doing the favor to Johnson, making Johnson look caring and concerned. Nothing could be further from the truth. So what I have said and what I'll repeat is this. The newspapers, Fleet Street newspapers, are liars. Even including the Times, which is saying The particularly different thing about Priti Patel ignoring the French requests, because their focus is on the migrants. In other words, the focus is on that aspect of the migrants which can be used by the likes of Johnson to score points in order to make himself, Johnson, come across as caring and come across as being out of the woods and out of the crisis of sleaze and corruption and dishonestly giving peerages to crooks. The reality is that Johnson has to be treated as the main offender in Britain for the kind of standoff with France for political purpose. And Johnson should be charged with crimes against humanity. Anyone else that can be found to be colluding and aiding and abetting Johnson should be charged with crime against humanity. There is nothing that any of the charities can do or will do or have the guts to do. There are various other restrictions on the charities doing anything that will stop the murderous massacres. Now we shall come to the massacre of the migrants again shortly, but we'll look briefly at the news item in the Times about racist London Metropolitan policemen who used racist slurs against these two sisters who were murdered in a northwest London park. And there is this cartoon by Peter Brooks in the Times, which is a cartoon based on the Labour MP for Waltham Forest, who has been in the news complaining about her being told off. For bringing her child into the House of Commons chambers. Now this one has got Boris Johnson as the baby in the House of Commons. Stella Creasy's baby was in the actual news, and this is the take by Peter Brooks on that baby crisis or baby kind of complaint. And Johnson is the baby in the House of Commons pram. This is not quite Johnson unravelling, but this is not far from the same thing, that Johnson doesn't exist as a person of integrity, morality, authority at all. Now, of course, this cartoon must have been written in terms of time too late for the inclusion of the massacre of the migrants as the main theme. And the heading on that massacre in the Times editorial reads "Predictable Tragedy." And its description in the subheading reads, "Without intensive cross-border cooperation to tackle people smuggling gangs, little can stem the flow of dangerous channel crossings and prevent further deaths." Now, that is not recognizing the UK's intentional, it's a predictable tragedy, but intentional massacre. Now, those people who still believe in the myth that the Times somehow is at the apex of the intellectual hegemony in terms of newspaper wisdom, etc., need to read this idiotic piece, because the Times still claims to be above the Sun and the tabloids, others, even though the Sun is owned by the same owner, Rupert Murdoch, who owns the scum. The point is that there is no recognition of the legal duties, international duties that UK is obliged under to really truthfully let the refugees in. And the editorial in the Times is banal and stupid. And the editorial on the same subject in the Scum is as stupid and banal and racist. So what am I saying? I'm saying on the facts that the Scum is in denial of the international treaty obligations that the UK is under to provide really secure and safe and fair and just and humane refuges and asylums to these people. Neither the Sun nor the Times is saying it, nor, despite the fact that the Guardian is quoting this Refugee Council person, Anwar Solomon. And unless and until Fleet Street stops being racist and stops being stupid and stops being Little England based, the people reading these papers or relying on these papers will not have anything in front of them to change their hostile, racist, brainwashed attitude of hatred against the asylum seekers and migrants that they have had fed into them, instilled into them for decades. So that is the Fleet Street failures. There is nothing in the ranks, as I said before, of the so-called Labour Party MPs that is making any noise at all that will shift the racist role being played by Boris Johnson-fronted cabal of massacre inciters, deaths inciters, mass murders inciters. These people that, according to the Times, or these particular group of victims of the massacre might be of Kurdish origin, makes no difference to the actual value, the actual impact, and the actual meaning of the massacres. There is nothing in the papers, in Fleet Street papers today, about the crimes against humanity that has been committed. And the crimes against humanity that should be invoked to try those responsible for the massacre. And to include in the trial, include in the prosecution, those who have been inciting hatred and disaffection against the would-be migrants, would-be asylum seekers for weeks, for months, for years. And there is no reference in the papers, in Fleet Street papers, there is no real reference, effective reference to even the existence of the United Nations, let alone any action by the United Nations. And there is nothing, quite apart from the intense exchanges between Boris Johnson and Emmanuel Macron's, there is no reference to even the existence of any other country in the world. Any other country, meaning any member of the United Nations, making any urgent, immediate demand for the prosecution of these mass murderers. Let alone the indictment of the named criminals from either France or from Britain. Finally, as usual, no sign whatsoever of any noise from the governments, any country in Asia, any country in Africa. Because although these people, these particular victims of the massacre, are said to be from Kurdish background, others wanting to cross the channel into the UK could be coming from any part of the world in Africa and Asia. Quite apart from the fact that their nationals might be victims of future massacres, these governments, who are all members of the United Nations, have got a humanitarian responsibility to take part in immediate urgent demands using the United Nations as the main international body to put in place stoppages to these murders and massacres. But there is nothing. There is nothing in the papers about any of those either. So you go back to what I said in January 1992 on Channel 4 News slot. We shall be continuing on this updated contextual factual diagnosis in later parts. So for the time being, we stop this one